The vibration of change, that magical place where life shifts from struggle to ease, from stagnation to forward movement, from old ways of being to new ways of becoming. Yes, it can seem rather elusive to get there, but when you are in it, you feel it down to your very core, and it can positively affect everything in your life, from your relationships to your health and well-being, from your career path to your abundance, from the quality of your inner connection to the fullness of your self-expression. Here on the Christine Upchurch Show, we explore ways to get into that vibration of change with experts in the fields of consciousness, psychology, spirituality, health, healing, and science. Are you ready to step into your vibration of change? Welcome to the Christine Upchurch Show here on KKNW 1150 AM in the Seattle area and Transformation Talk Radio around the world. I'm so grateful you've joined us here today because we're going to have another fabulous guest, and we're going to be talking about life in a unique way, something we've never talked about. And I always get a kick, Benny, out of saying this is something new and different because after 7 years or however long it's been that I've been doing radio, it's kind of fun to have something new and different.
Who doesn't? It's challenging. Keeps our mind right.
It
Keep
does.
Going. We
It
don't want
does.
to be, complacent and all that.
And I really enjoy
Having me here. Yes, I know.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the show wouldn't be the show without you, Benny, you know.
Well, you didn't expect that, did you?
No, but I really enjoy having guests who make me reconsider some of my beliefs.
Yeah.
And sort of shift my orientation about life because I think we get kind of stuck in our belief system. Mm-hmm. And our guest today does exactly that. Mm-hmm. Our guest today is Dr. Stephen Nachmanovitch, and he's the author of Free Play and his latest book, The Art of Is. I love that, The Art of Is. He performs and teaches internationally as an improvisational violinist, a lecturer, a workshop leader, and a multimedia artist. He holds degrees, from Harvard and the University of California, and his work spans many fields, exploring the spiritual and social underpinnings of art. He lives with his family on the East Coast in Charlottesville, Virginia. And I'd like to welcome our guest today, Dr. Stephen Nachmanovitch. Stephen, welcome.
Hi there. Thank you very much for having me on.
You know, I'm fascinated by your book, The Art of Is, and the subtitle is Improvising as a Way of Life. Now, I know that you wrote a very popular book, decades ago, called Free Play, about improvisation, and you've chosen to write a new book now. Why?
Well, I think we're in a different place in society. I think there are things that I've learned over the decades since the last book. Part of it is in the difference between the word improvisation and the word improvising. Mm-hmm. I mean, I had there's a story in the book, there's a chapter called Verbs and Nouns. And one time, I think it was in 2007, 2006, I was about to give the keynote talk at a conference of improvisers in Wales. And this was one of the few conferences that combined musicians, dancers, theater people, literary people, filmmakers, all kinds of artists. And of course, being an improviser, I never write down a talk before I give it.
Yes.
But I always go through, there's a certain period of panic before I give a talk where I think, okay, this is the one where I'll really make a complete fool of myself in public.
And what happened?
It always happened. And anyway, so a few days before I went to Wales, I was in London walking around the south bank of the Thames, which was very beautiful that day. And I walked into a bookshop, and I was walking past some section in the bookshop, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw a book that was like fire engine red with white lettering that said improvising. So, of course, I turned around and did a double take and, what's this? Who wrote this? What did they have to say? But when I looked at the shelf, I couldn't find the book.
Isn't that
And I started
interesting?
scanning up and down the shelves, thinking, well, maybe I'd scrambled the letters of
Uh-huh.
some other book, something like. But I didn't. It was actually a complete hallucination. And then I realized that actually I have just been given the theme of the talk that I needed to give.
Mm-hmm.
Because improvising, it's a present participle. It's a verb in the present tense.
Right.
It's something, you and I are talking now.
And
Okay,
we were improvising, aren't we? Yes.
Yeah, we're improvising now, and we've never talked before. Okay, that's not to say that you and I are always talkers, because we're often silent during the day. We're often doing other things.
Right.
But at this moment, we're talking. We've never spoken before, so of course we're improvising together in conversation. You don't have to be a professional musician or actor to get up on stage and be able to improvise an art form.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone has conversations every day, and those are all improvisational. And so I realized that being a verb is a really important theme of this work.
Mm-hmm.
To realize that, you're not stuck in I am a writer, and if you say I am a writer, then the days that you don't write or that you have trouble writing, you have writer's block, and you now need cure for your writer's block.
Right.
And if instead you realize I'm writing, at 1 o'clock until 1:30 today I was writing, whatever it may be.
Right.
It's an activity, and it takes place in real time. And it doesn't take place all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And it gives us an entry into the moment and into the fact that everything changes.
Right. And when I think about nouns, and I know you mentioned this in your book, nouns are things. They're static. And the present participle, as in improvising, it's action in the present moment. So why is it important not only to turn it into sort of an action word, but to bring it into the present moment?
Well, interestingly enough, when you say why is it important, I'll go in two different directions there. Okay, the first direction is I'm calling you from my home office and studio here in Virginia, and somebody was just outside with a lawnmower. And let's say if this were a musical interaction rather than a conversation in words, the lawnmower would ruin the music if it was pre-composed music. Okay. However, if it's an improvisation, then the lawnmower just becomes part of what is going on. It's not a disturbance. It's not anything but what you make of it. And to be able to, of course, John Cage, we know, helped introduce this kind of idea into our culture in many ways, as well as many other artists. But to be able to absorb what is happening, that's the art of is. The lawnmower is blowing. Now the lawnmower is not blowing. And the art of is to roll with that and respond to it. The second part of being present, interestingly enough, is that by being present right here and being sensitive to the details of what actually is happening now, you're more aware of context and you're more aware of things that are far away in space and time. We're living in an age when our species is busy destroying the biosphere.
Right.
And we seem to get busier and busier at it. And the consequences for society, the consequences for our future life, the consequences for our children, these are often regarded by people as something far away or in the future. However, if you're really present and you see what is in front of you, you realize that you're part of a tissue of interrelatedness that includes the lawnmower, it includes the woods, it includes the pesticides, it includes people's intentions,
Right.
and So strangely enough, by being very present in the moment and aware of context, you're aware of things that are also very big and hard to grasp.
Mm-hmm. And I talk about something called the vibration of change. I teach a workshop about it, and the vibration of change to me is that place where we are energetically connected to the here and now in the present moment, and that's where change takes place. So it seems to me that on a global level, we have to get to that place on an individual level of being aware and on some level allowing and allowing ourselves to feel, as well as to come to terms with the truth of the situation, to to have that possibility of inspired change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is where art, in the broadest sense of the word, comes in to help us understand things, both receiving art and creating art.
Mm-hmm.
Because we are able to see, hear, feel things that are both immediate and far away, and the experiences of other people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's that famous line, which we don't know if Abraham Lincoln actually said it, when Harriet Beecher Stowe visited him in the White House, where he said, "So you're the little lady who made this big war." And for people far away from slavery to become aware of slavery,
Mm-hmm.
for people far away from anything that happens in the world that we might want to shun, to become aware of it, you know, it's brought to us. It was brought to us by Harriet Beecher Stowe's novel. Frederick Douglass, at the same time, in the mid-19th century, was a huge fan of the art of photography,
Mm-hmm.
because he felt that photography was actually bringing people far away, close to the reality of suffering.
Oh, interesting.
And that's what art does. You know, whether it be a terrible reality or a blissful reality, we're able to expand our awareness of what's going on around us and to be more complete.
Yeah. We have to go to a quick break, but when we return, I'm going to want to talk more about art and what that means for so-called non-artists. Stay tuned for more with Dr. Stephen Nachmanovitch.
If you have a sense that you were meant for more, join Heather Allison every third Tuesday at noon Pacific as she explores an ancient, forgotten energy within us and helps us access our original archetypal blueprint. The Golden Path will help you remember the key to unlocking your life, love, success, and magic you were meant for. A key to unlocking your golden path. Visit heather-allison.com.
The vibration of change, that magical place where life shifts from struggle to ease, from stagnation to forward movement, from old ways of being to new ways of becoming. If you're like I am, it can be rather elusive to get there, but when you are in it, you feel it down to your very core, don't you? And it can positively affect everything in your life, from your relationships to your health and well-being, from your career path to your abundance, from the quality of that inner connection to the fullness of your self-expression. On the Christine Upchurch Show, we explore ways to get into that vibration of change with experts in the fields of consciousness, psychology, spirituality, health, healing, and science. Join me, Christine Upchurch, every Friday at 11 a.m. Pacific Time, 2 p.m. Eastern Time on KKNW AM 1150 and Transformation Talk Radio, and learn new ways to step into your vibration of change.
How many times do you find yourself saying, "It was nothing"? Next time someone tells you, "Great job," you'll know how to accept it and not deflect it by listening to Courage to Be Seen Radio with host Sherry Clark. Sherry Clark is an experienced global engineering leader, coach, and mentor. From her experiences one-on-one coaching to corporate consulting and executive coaching, Sherry has learned many women need at least 3 things to discover and face success. Learn about the ACES program, how to survive male-dominated fields with grace and authenticity, and reach the top without ever once giving up on who you are. Courage to be Seen host Sherry Clark explores the awesome power of your entire self. Check out her website, couragetobeseen.com, and listen to the first Tuesday of the month at 11 a.m. Pacific with host Sherry Clark. You have the courage to be seen. See you later.
I'm Christine Upchurch, and this is a Stellar Reflections Minute. For centuries, spiritual traditions have talked about how humans have an energy field, or aura, surrounding them. Although skeptical scientists refuted this for decades, science is now beginning to catch up with spirituality. Scientists can actually measure light emanating from living beings, so they can measure the human aura, which in scientific terms is known as the biofield. Many medical practitioners around the world use an instrument to evaluate a patient's biofield for the purpose of diagnosing illness. They understand that imbalanced or insufficient light in a person's energy field indicates a physical or emotional problem. The good news? There are ways to balance and increase your light, resulting in greater well-being. For more information, please check out stellarreflections.com or call 425-999-9836. That's 425-999-9836. Welcome back to the Christine Upchurch Show here on KKNW and Transformation Talk Radio. And I do believe that was Dr. Stephen Nachmanovitch himself. Is that right?
Yep. What you can find on the internet these days, what the kids are doing.
That's great.
Right?
That's great.
It's well
Yes.
done. It's a great piece.
It is beautiful. Now, before the break, you were talking about the importance of like what we learn from art and how that brings us into the present moment and gives us a new kind of awareness. I had an experience, I don't know, maybe 6 months ago where I was lying in bed. It was one of those mornings where I didn't have to get up too quickly, and I was lounging, and then eventually I got my phone out, and I'm lying in bed, and I accidentally took a screenshot of, or not a screenshot, but a photo of, and I noticed how sideways my view was. And I'm thinking, I didn't recognize that I was that sideways until I saw the photo of my position. And yes, I'm grateful that our brains can compensate for like all that kind of off, sensory and input, like, okay, you're sideways and your head's a little, off center. And yet it was interesting to me, so interesting that I ended up writing a blog about it, that sometimes we think something's normal, but until we look at it through the lens of the observer, we don't see what the truth about it is.
Yeah.
And so how do we apply the wisdom and the benefits of art if we're not artists per se?
Well, there's a way in which we're all artists. There was a episode in The Art of Is where I talk about knobology. I was in the hospital getting an echocardiogram to see what was going on with my heart. And I handed the woman who was doing it a thumb drive and asked her to please copy all the video files from the echocardiogram for me because I wanted to see what it looked like and perhaps make a piece of visual music out of it.
I love that.
And I have a long history with biological stuff as a source of art. So that's really interesting to me. So she said, sure, I'm an artist too. And I asked her what her art form was, and I expected her to say that in addition to her medical job, she was also a singer-songwriter or photographer or something like that. And instead, she patted the echocardiogram machine and she said, "This." And she started talking about something that's called knobology in that business.
Uh-huh.
The echocardiogram machine is full of knobs and dials,
Right.
and there are so many ways to adjust the contrast and the depth at which you're creating an image and the way in which you move the sensor over the person's skin. And the possibilities are endless. And she said that when she comes in the morning and she sees studies of people's hearts that were done by her colleagues,
Uh-huh.
she can tell each one, like, who did it.
Interesting.
Okay, so that even in something that seems to be as objective and by the book as a medical procedure like that,
Uh-huh.
everybody has their individual style.
Right.
And to somebody who is inside the art form, those styles are recognizable.
Fascinating.
Yes, it is fascinating. I mean, that was a very interesting lesson. And it kind of takes, it's easy for us to come up with platitudes about how all people are creative and we are all artists in some way, but that's kind of an empty statement.
Sure.
However, to sort of see it in practice with this person and her echocardiogram machine, knobology is also a term of art on submarines and aircraft carriers.
Huh.
And you can just visualize, especially the older analog style of equipment where you have banks of controls and knobs and, how do you tweak this one and how do you tweak that one?
Mm-hmm.
And it's all a matter of personal style.
Right.
And yet the purpose of the personal style is to produce a certain objective, clear image of something that you really need to see.
Mm-hmm.
So all of our attempts to produce objective, clear images have to get filtered through somebody's being able and willing to tweak things and change things and adjust and have the skill and the practice of operating a piece of machinery or a musical instrument
Uh-huh.
or whatever our chosen medium is.
Right. I think about something as simple as making a salad. Now, I've had companies staying over and, volunteering to make the salad, and it can be the exact same ingredients as what I was going to use if I made the salad, and they make it very differently, and it's fascinating to watch. Different approach to slicing, different shape of the lettuce, different arrangement of the vegetables within the bowl, and it's like, it's something I just do automatically when I'm putting a salad together. I don't really think too much about it, and yet there must be some art to it if we do it so differently from one another.
Yeah. That's a really interesting example because it's a supposedly trivial thing,
Uh-huh.
but it isn't really trivial because, okay, where did, there's your personal style of making the salad, but there's also your awareness of where the food comes from and how it got to you and all of the agricultural and industrial procedures and the whole history of organic evolution that's behind all of that.
Right.
So if a musician gets up with an instrument to improvise either solo or with another instrument, you actually, people say, well, how can you play music if you've got nothing to rely on?
Mm-hmm.
But actually, what you have to rely on is 3.5 billion years of organic evolution.
Mm.
Everything that has ever happened can come to bear on what you do in this moment.
Right.
And when you do the salad, when everybody has their particular style of chopping the lettuce, which results in a different texture, a different flavor, that sort of thing,
Mm-hmm.
that's really interesting.
Right. Yeah.
That is, another one of the meanings of the word art. I mean, the etymology of art is from the same root as articulation or arthropod.
Ah,
An arthropod like an insect or spider has a
right.
lot of joints,
Uh-huh.
and articulation is a joint.
Right.
And it's actually about how do you put things together? How do you find interesting ways of putting things together which not only are interesting to you, but may reveal something about how the world around you is put together?
Right. Yeah. And I think about, painters who are using the same medium, using the same colors, even painting the same image, how different the effect can be when viewing that same, the same image that's been translated through the artist's eyes.
Yeah.
And so there's such an individual mark on it, and of course, as an observer of the art, each of us is going to view it differently too.
Yeah.
So, when you're improvising as a musician, do things always work out smoothly?
Usually they do. I mean, it's really interesting. As I was describing before when I gave the example of my talk,
Uh-huh.
which really happens almost every time I give a talk or every time I give a performance. My wife is always laughing at, I make, when I'm about to leave on a gig, and I say, well, this time I really don't know what I'm doing, and I've lost it, and I just have nothing. I just have nothing. There's nothing up my quiver at all.
Uh-huh.
And of course, she laughs at me because, of course, it always turns out well.
Uh-huh.
And because conversations turn out.
Right.
I mean, certainly it's possible for disasters to happen.
Uh-huh.
But by and large, and there are times when you're tired and times when you misread other people,
Mm-hmm.
and it's certainly possible to make mistakes. But by and large, most of the time, if you learn to rely on the moment and rely on a kind of awareness of what's going on around you at that moment,
Mm-hmm.
then things turn out well.
Yeah. Well, I think about when I've taught in front of large groups of people, how there's an aspect of reading what the audience needs to hear. So you don't even have to have them asking questions to direct your route. It's kind of like this. Like sometimes I will have a direction that I'm planning on going, and then all of a sudden I'll just feel like, nope, what's needed right now is going that direction. So it's talking is also about listening, even when you're teaching.
Exactly.
We're going to go to another quick break, but stay tuned for more about the art of is. I'm Christine Upchurch, and this is a Stellar Reflections Minute. What does the word healing mean? Many think that healing merely means eliminating symptoms. However, based on my many years as a healer, I have a much broader perspective on the word. Healing can manifest in a variety of ways, including having physical problems resolved, becoming more emotionally centered, experiencing better relationships, gaining greater clarity, and feeling more spiritually connected. True healing always includes some level of transformation. Whatever form healing takes, there is one commonality, an improvement in quality of life. To me, the highest form of healing goes beyond aligning with wellness. It comes from recognizing our soul's voice and allowing it to speak through us. And in that sense, don't we all yearn to heal into our wholeness? Please visit stellarreflections.com or call 425-999-9836. That's 425-999-9836.
Calling all moms. It's time to awaken your vibrant, intuitive, and loving self in every area of your life. Join host Debbie Pokornik as she shares thoughts, stories, and tools to help you stand in your power at work, home, and play. Listen to Vibrant, Powerful Moms, helping everyday women create extraordinary lives every Monday at 3:30 p.m. Pacific, 6:30 Eastern. For more information about Debbie, visit vibrantpowerfulmoms.com.
Is traditional medicine not working for you? Do you still feel as if your health isn't 100%? Here at the Holistic Medical Center, Dr. Nushin Darvish and the qualified staff look through the dimensions of wellness and start a healing plan prioritized to your needs. Our physicians assess the whole you until complete health is achieved. Get the help you need by visiting drdarvish.com or call 425-451-0404.
The vibration of change, that magical place where life shifts from struggle to ease, from stagnation to forward movement, from old ways of being to new ways of becoming. If you're like I am, it can be rather elusive to get there, but when you are in it, you feel it down to your very core, don't you? And it can positively affect everything in your life, from your relationships to your health and well-being, from your career path to your abundance, from the quality of that inner connection to the fullness of your self-expression. On the Christine Upchurch Show, we explore ways to get into that vibration of change with experts in the fields of consciousness, psychology, spirituality, health, healing, and science. Join me, Christine Upchurch, every Friday at 11 a.m. Pacific Time, 2 p.m. Eastern Time on KKNW AM 1150 and Transformation Talk Radio, and learn new ways to step into your vibration of change. Welcome back to the Christine Upchurch Show here on KKNW and Transformation Talk Radio. That was Dr. Stephen Nachmanovitch, and he is on right now, author of Free Play and the Art of Is, Improvising as a Way of Life. You know, when listening to that, just that little bit of improvised music, there are these moments where you're pausing. And I feel this real sense of anticipation. And I'm wondering if there is greater power in improvised music than there is in, music that's been written down and, played over and over again.
Well, that's a great question. Of course, the answer to that, like all questions, is yes and no.
I love that.
So, yes, and improvise, and of course, this is also, it's a feature of my style.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I know fellow improvisers who like to play really fast and continuously,
Uh-huh.
and that's very impressive. But especially as I've gotten older, I become more and more interested in silence.
Uh-huh.
And more interested in what happens in between the tones. I remember one time I was a guest at the University of Michigan, and Ken Fisher, who was the head of the College Music Society there, took me around campus and took me up to the top of the very famous bell tower,
Mm-hmm.
where they have one of the biggest carillons in the world. And so he allowed me to fool around with it, which I'd never done before. And the thing that was interesting, of course, we often hear carillons playing, a familiar piece of music that's just ringing out continuously, note after note after note. But what really interested me is that you played the bell, and those big bells have such a long reverb time.
Mm-hmm.
And why interrupt that
Right.
with another sound? Let that sound happen, because you don't actually need all of that extra unless you're trying to prove your technical abilities.
Mm-hmm.
You don't actually need all those other sounds. What you can always say. There's a saying from one of the old Chinese Zen masters that not even a good thing is as good as nothing.
Hmm.
And I don't know if
Interesting.
you're
Yeah.
familiar with the composer Morton Feldman.
No.
He wrote music that was very long, very slow, with a lot of silences in it, and very, very soft. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, he barely got above a pianissimo. And I remember I met him when I was younger, and I heard his music performed at festivals, and I thought it was really boring.
Mm-hmm.
And now that I'm older, I really like it.
Interesting. Why the change?
Well, I guess I've come to appreciate silence more.
Mm-hmm.
And when I used to teach workshops, I used to give a lot of instructions. And now, if I'm really successful in a workshop, I will really keep my mouth shut.
Hmm. That's
And
fascinating.
people actually know what to do, and they know how to do it. And if you ask them verbally about that, of course, they think they need instruction.
Uh-huh.
But actually, it's so much more interesting to teach in silence and to just use gesture and sound and allow people the space to step forward and express themselves
All right.
without saying,
I
here's
think
your instructions, this is what you have to do. Now I'll hold your hand and then you can do it.
uh-huh. I think about conversation, which you talk about as being, something that we're continually improvising. Sometimes conversation can be like this excited, fascinating banter that's quick, and you get something out of that. And other times the conversation can be slow, with pausing to absorb, interpret, to feel, and both types of conversation feel very important and of value.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And of course, how art is made is to balance those two.
in what way?
Well, I mean, if you have music or the pace of a novel or whatever the art form is, to balance the quick and the lively with the quiet and the near silent is really interesting.
Yeah, it is.
You know, to do all one thing is often less interesting.
Uh-huh.
And you know, again, people who are creating composed music or composed literature are always having to balance people's expectations with surprise, and it's good to have some surprise and some expectation.
Uh-huh.
You know, and too much of one is not as interesting as mixing them both.
Right. And I think about some of the best comedy movies over the years where there's that lively fun, but you get into the, how do I put this? It's like you get more into the depth of one of the characters, usually the protagonist, and there's this quiet absorbing of who they are and what their motivations are. So that kind of balance is, yeah, you're right. It's very important, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, there's a story I tell in the book about John Cage, where, of course, Cage was one of the pioneers. I mean, actually, the pioneers go back for centuries, but he was one of the pioneers in the past century of introducing noise into music and introducing ambient sound and people paying attention to, coughing and birds singing and outside sound.
Uh-huh.
And so he lived in the teens in the village in New York, and I was visiting him in his apartment, and a siren, an ambulance or police car went by with its blaring siren.
Uh-huh.
And he turned to me and he said, when I was younger, I was really interested in those kinds of outside sounds like sirens and traffic noise. But now that I'm old, I'm really interested in more subtle sounds like the noise of the refrigerator turning on and off.
And it seems to me that in order to have interest in something like the refrigerator sound, you need to first become aware of it. And that awareness of something subtle takes a little bit more, I don't know if it's attention, I guess, than something like a blaring ambulance siren.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're going to go to another quick break, but when we return, there's a fascinating story about a speech that's really famous that you don't want to miss. Stay tuned for more with Dr. Stephen Nachmanovitch about the art of improvising as a way of life. I'm Christine Upchurch, and this is a Stellar Reflections Minute. As a former research statistician, my scientific background is what many would call sensible. For more than a decade now, I have been working in the field of energy medicine, facilitating sessions and teaching around the world. People from the mainstream often ask me, how did a sensible woman like you end up working in such an alternative field? Implicit in their question is the underlying assumption that the field of subtle energy, such as energy healing and intuition, isn't sensible. But I believe it is very sensible. Even scientists are able to measure aspects of this. Approaching life from an energetic perspective brings us new opportunity for healing and transformation. And from a practical standpoint, even if you can't rationally explain how something works, if you experience a shift from it, then doesn't it make it pretty sensible? Please visit stellarreflections.com or call 425-999-9836. That's 425-999-9836.
What is a brilliant culture, and how do we create them? Why are they important? Claudette Rowley has created a breakthrough 5-step process to help you align your culture with your business strategy for exceptional results. Looking for a culture that drives organizational excellence? Listen to Cultural Brilliance Radio, the second and fourth Friday of each month at 10 a.m. Pacific and 1 p.m. Eastern on Transformation Talk Radio. To learn more or work with Claudette, visit culturalbrilliance.com.
Are you willing to challenge everything you've been taught about life and death? Join Angie Corbett-Kuiper on her hit show Beyond Grief Radio, redefining loss and grief as Angie shares through choice, present moment awareness, and keeping an open mind that creating anything is possible, even in death. Tune in every Wednesday at 12 p.m. Pacific on TransformationTalkRadio.com. For more information or to listen to past shows, visit AngieCorbettKuiper.com.
Have you been seeing numbers like 111 and 222 everywhere you go? Do you feel that the universe may be trying to get your attention, perhaps offering a message of some sort? As it turns out, numerical patterns and certain types of geometry form the very fabric of our reality, from cells under a microscope to the astronomy of our night sky. At Stellar Reflections, we offer special sessions which tap into these patterns, designed specifically to support you on your journey. The 111 and 222 activations are sessions activating new patterns in your energy field, which in turn can help you create new patterns in your life. After just one session with a practitioner, either in person or via distance, clients report gaining greater clarity, becoming more intuitive, and honoring their inner truth as they move forward in their lives. Curious about what these transformational sessions might do for you? Call 425-999-9836 or visit stellarreflections.com. That's stellarreflections.com. Welcome back to the Christine Upchurch Show here on KKNW and Transformation Talk Radio. Before we go any further, Stephen, I want to make sure our listeners know how they can connect with you. What's your website?
Website is freeplay.com.
And I think that this fall you've got a special event going on down in, I'm going to say it wrong because it would annoy those people, New Orleans or
New Orleans. Yes. Yes, last year there was a wonderful conference called Improvisation, New Orleans Gift to the World.
Uh-huh.
And I was there. It was organized by a good friend of mine, Randy Fertel, with other colleagues. And it was really a wonderful event. And this coming November, we're going to have the second annual conference. And I'm really looking forward to that.
Great.
The nice thing about these kinds of things is that they combine people from many, many different fields.
Uh-huh.
So you had musicians, theater people, chefs, political people, writers, all kinds of people.
Mm-hmm.
And each person's experience is different and reflects something valuable through the other people's experience.
Uh-huh. And your website is freeplay.com, Freeplay.
Freeplay. Named after my first book.
Right. And I love that phrase, free play. And because I think, first of all, play is wonderful, and we all seek freedom of expression, freedom in a variety of ways. And I love that, freeplay.com. Okay, so I promised our listeners that you've got a story to share about a speech.
Yes. Well, this is actually the opening of the book because it's kind of a parable for template for everything that develops in the book through all the different art forms I talk about. And that is, I actually heard about this in 2013. It was the anniversary of the great, of the March on Washington.
Uh-huh.
And Martin Luther King's speech at the Lincoln Memorial. And I was just listening to the radio in my car on the way home, and Clarence Jones had just written a book about this speech. Clarence Jones was Dr. King's speechwriter and close friend and lawyer,
Uh-huh.
and collaborated with him on a lot of things. And Jones was talking about the famous I Have a Dream speech and pointing out that the written speech that was prepared did not mention dreams.
Mm.
And Dr. King started giving the speech, and if you look at the many film clips of him giving the speech, you can see him staring down at the lectern reading his speech.
Uh-huh.
And 7 paragraphs into the speech, one of his closest friends was the great gospel singer, Mahalia Jackson. And she had just sung and then sat down, and then Dr. King spoke.
Uh-huh.
And she was a friend whom he often talked to on the phone about his worries and troubles, and he had mentioned to her that several months before that he had given a speech on this theme of the dream
Mm-hmm.
in Detroit, and he wasn't really that satisfied with it, and he thought it kind of fell flat.
Uh-huh.
And there he is in front of 250,000 people reading this carefully prepared speech, and Mahalia Jackson shouts out at him, "Tell him about the dream, Martin. Tell him about the dream." And instantly, he pushes his papers aside to the left. You can see it. He lifts his head up, and he looks straight at the audience, and he begins improvising.
And what did he say? How did he begin it?
We know. I have a dream.
Yes.
And, what he said in that speech was so poetic. He had said similar things before, but this time it was different.
Uh-huh.
And, of course, it came from many different sources. there was Gandhi was such a huge source for him. The Bible was such a huge source for him. The Declaration of Independence, Shakespeare. You can find all of these kind of verbal traces of the influences on him as he improvised that great speech. And of course, what was going on was that all of these influences had been kind of integrated within his belly, so that what came out was him.
Right.
As a human being, interdependent with all of those other influences that he had in his life.
And there in the moment, improvising his passion.
There in the moment, improvising and doing what must be done. And he, of course, now children study the speech in school, and there's the written transcript of it. And so it's all treated as though it was all one speech. There's the opening part that was written and the I Have a Dream part that was improvised. And this is the way improvised art often works. You know, now it's regarded as a text. Then it was a live event in the moment.
Right.
There are many similar things in our culture. I mean, Homer, whoever he or she was, improvised the Odyssey. And there were generations and generations of storytellers that continued to re-improvise variations on that same story.
Right.
Until they eventually were written down, you know. And we sometimes think of Homer as like the illiterate bard, and then there were generations of bards who repeated the same poem word for word until it was written down. But that's not how it happened. There's some great scholarship in the literary world on this since the early part of the century when Milman Parry and Marcel Jousse and other scholars went to work on this problem. And there's a continuous stream of literary, poetic improvisation that stretches all the way from Homer to freestyle rap.
Interesting. So we've just got a couple of minutes left here. What's your advice for our listeners about how to take the wisdom, the power, and the joy, the life force of improvising and integrate it into our daily living?
Well, the first thing is to really pay attention so that you see, hear, and feel everything that's around you. When I teach workshops, people often, you know, we're paying attention to these trivial noises like the creak of a door down the hall and that sort of thing, or the birds outside, or the children playing outside. But the more you can learn to pay attention to these simple things that are around you, the more you're then able to pay attention to and creatively engage with the skills that you've acquired, to integrate the skills that you've acquired into a more complete sense of being. I mean, I talked about Dr. King's speech and how there were so many influences that came to bear on that speech, but what came out was him because he had digested it all.
Right.
You know, and that's what we all can do, to begin to regard just simple actions like, you know, rubbing your hand against the wood grain of the table and exquisitely feeling all the detail and expanding from there to doing skilled and practiced action in whatever your chosen field of activity is. And to, you know, and just as you can pay attention to the seemingly trivial noises in the room around you, you can then also pay attention to the more difficult and more distant noises of the troubles that are happening in the world around us, and to be able to respond to them.
Right. And of course, we all process that differently, so it would be a different different kind of awareness in a sense, and a different creation. You know, this is fascinating, Stephen, and I'm sorry we've run out of time, but I want to thank you for joining me here today. It's been a fascinating conversation and a wonderful book, The Art of Is. Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to be with you.
And I want to thank you for joining us here today. Again, I want to remind you, Stephen's website is freeplay.com, and if you want to hear this in archive form, share this with others, you want to see what type of work I do, read some of my blogs, please go to christineupchurch.com. And I look forward to talking to you again soon. Thanks so much for tuning in today. If you'd like to empower yourself to step further into your vibration of change, please visit my website at christineupchurch.com, where you can learn more about my insights, upcoming events, and private sessions.